Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Today we're going to engrave a baobab tree. I grew up with baobab trees, absolutely magnificent, native to Africa, full of water. You can't just tap into it, of course. With the fruit of it looking like long hanging sausages is the cream of tartar. Fantastic. Very famous tree. So I'm starting off with a little green stone just to map in the basic shape, which I've drawn on with obviously a green pen, non-permanent, just sketched it on very, very roughly. This tree features an enormous trunk. It's like an upside down tree, in fact can be called the tree of life. It has branches that look like roots, and then of course this enormous trunk. Now, I'm breaking all my rules of engraving a subject that is working in sympathy with the shape of the glass. I wonder how many of you noticed that. Sometimes I throw caution to the wind and just engrave what I want. This decanter slopes inwards, sort of fat at the bottom. Yeah, fat at the bottom's really nice for a big fat trunk. However, obviously the branches of the baobab branch out sideways and the decanter slopes inwards. So theoretically this should be a very bad shape for this tree. But it actually works fine. It is art, and sometimes we can break the rules. We have artistic license. Clearly, right here I've got a great big diamond. Clearly I have already sandblasted the details, the private details along the bottom. It's obviously a birthday, and so I did that first of all. I usually always do the sandblasting first and then the hand engraving. Now, obviously a lot of water. This is a big old diamond. I'm holding it mostly on its side and gouging into, well, I was, yeah, come back. Gouging into the decanter now. It's very, very thick. It's Krosno glass. It's not crystal, but it's a pretty good quality glass. Lovely and thick, very heavy decanter. And I can get well and truly stuck into this. I have a feeling this part of it I have sped up to 120% of normal speed, which I do from time to time throughout this video. Please excuse the real schoolgirl habit that I have of writing on my hand. I had to remember, obviously, a battery for some reason. I can't even spell the word by the looks of things. And I had to do this in a hurry, and I thought I better film it. So I just grabbed it, started filming it, and really just couldn't be bothered. I really had to remember whatever it was I needed the battery for. So I couldn't wash it off, otherwise I would have forgotten. That's how my brain works, and I can remember doing that at school quite regularly. I wonder how many of you did the same. And it works. Okay, so still gouging away. Absolutely free. There's no rules to this. I am glancing across at a few photographs, which I've randomly chosen, but certainly not stuck to religiously. Of course, crumbs, there's just no end to the possibilities of the shapes of this tree and all its branches and its enormous trunk. So, and there's various types of baobabs, but this is a very typical looking baobab. They do have leaves on, obviously, from time to time, and fruit, but this baobab I've engraved without its leaves. Obviously, like, they don't have leaves all throughout the year. And at the moment, I'm going for the sort of bare look. Clearly, this is a commission, of course. And if I can remember correctly, it was relatively urgent, as is quite normal in my line of work. Everyone wants it yesterday. So tons of water, as you can see, and it's flying up everywhere. And it's quite fascinating with my camera now situated directly above the engraving these days. I do have to keep, well, I don't wipe. I use a little brush to brush off the bits of speckled glass that do keep getting up onto the camera lens. And it's quite a clever little camera, because you don't really notice while it's filming that there is actually bits of glass on the lens. And yeah, I'm quite impressed. You can see I changed the angle of this burr using the point and going in the direction of the branches, because I want to use the shape of the burr and make full use of that width. There we go. It's actually a proper little camera brush that I use, so it's very special, very soft. And this is a slightly smaller diamond burr to the previous one, compared to the previous one, I should say. And I am whizzing around the edges, as I say, probably 120% of real time, and neatening up any little bits that I see that need neatening up. And then obviously I'm going to be adding some new branches and bits of texture, making it up as I go along. Sometimes when you've got a craggy old tree or craggy old branches to do, sometimes, like for example an old grapevine, I don't lean my hand so that I don't have to control it. I let it hover freehand over the glass and do my bit with a diamond, and it automatically wiggles and wobbles everywhere as the shape of the branches do, especially an old craggy one. So I have fun doing that. But today I am still leaning my hand on. But obviously, branches are branches. Having said that, good old, the late Bob Ross, absolutely adored him. Famous American painter, tutor. And he used to explain as he went along with his oil paintings how you should draw each branch or paint each branch with meaning, and imagine each branch has life in it. They have little squirrels running up and down it. I would say there's probably a hell of a lot of ants running up and down these trees, and maybe a couple of swarms of bees and that sort of thing going on in the baobab. Probably snakes as well, quite frankly. But it's a home for many living creatures. And so as we are creating it, we need to think about that. Even though we are moving quite fast, still think about it. Always keep in mind that the ends of the branches need to be narrower than the beginnings, the part of the branch nearer the trunk. And if you find that you've made a branch slightly chubby, then go back and thicken the earlier part of it so that it is not thinner than the end or parts in between. Otherwise it will look a little bit naive, amateurish. You will notice, of course, with decanters and that sort of thing, put some tape over the top so that you don't get glass dust going into the decanter, because washing it out is a real pain in the neck, and it's really nice and clean inside. And so I like to keep it that way. If you wash it out, you really need to wash it out with quite warm water, and then leave it upside down over a special little decanter hanging gadget. I'll tell you what works as well is one of those stands that you put kitchen towels on, as long as it's got a rubber end to it. You upside down your decanter on that. Right, here is a very old grey rubber, the really rough grey rubber, the ones that they start off life rather enormous. And I love them. They are fantastic. You can see the incredible effect it has immediately. And you can see how it is picking up the upper surface, because I have engraved so irregularly and so deeply in places, so that I had in mind, of course, this effect with the rubber skipping over the surface and picking up the surface and not going right into the deep areas. And but because it is slightly soft, it does go in ever so slightly, so you get a sort of a graded shading, but the darkest shading will be on the absolute surface, the uppermost, the most shallow. So I am doing this at great speed, but I'm kind of trying to think what branch is in front of what. And it should just about all work out as long as you've engraved it correctly. So anything in front is going to be deeper than the back, so the shading will work perfectly. I've got the big diamond burr out again, working dry and adding some interesting highlights. Now these highlights are interesting because they are picking up some of the upper surface, but I'm going very lightly, and so it's creating a completely different highlight. It's not going into the normal deep shapes. It's picking along the lines of the upper surface that in fact has just been polished. So I am adding an instant texture. And here I have got a rubber disc, which is once again going over, and in fact it has a much darker effect. You do not need to run these very fast at all. And neither do you have to press that hard either. But you get used to them. I think I changed my mind a bit with some of the highlights I just added. Or I've come back now and I'm adding them again. I wanted to actually bring out this front part of the trunk a little bit more. There you go. You can see it gives it a nice little sharp edge. Do you know that some of these trees have been carved out on the inside, or in fact some have got so really old that they've started dying on the inside, and you can walk inside them and you can sleep inside them. They are that enormous. Right, I have got a bullet rubber now, which is relatively soft, and I am running over some of the branches so that I can soften the shades of them. I am not too worried about the fact that this rubber, if you run it over clear glass, it will leave a little hue. It doesn't matter in this case. We're going to be adding an awful lot more teeny tiny twigs, and so something like this it just doesn't matter. All it does is help to fill in the spaces if I've gone over the edge of the little bit. Oops. Clearly I'm worried about my screen. I tell you what, when I do that, I check the screen from time to time, and it is absolutely covered in dots, and yet it carries on filming. It's so clever. This focusing effect is amazing. Anyway, so I've cleaned it up now, and I have got a smaller diamond burr, and as you can see, I am very quickly randomly adding in little tiny twigs and branches. But again, not randomly, I am thinking about each one that I do. This film is sped up, but it is very random. If you are bringing a little twig in front of another branch, you've definitely got to go much deeper than what you've already engraved the branch that is in front. Or rather, if you want it behind, then you've got to engrave at least to that depth and beyond, bringing the little branch in front of it. And obviously going behind it, you just stop in your tracks neatly to the edge. Don't leave a gap. If you have to go over to make it neat and then go over the front branch again, do that rather. But it's a very common mistake to leave a gap between, branches or stems and flowers and that sort of thing. Offer a wonderful homestead for weaver birds. We have a beautiful bird called the weaver bird that creates little nests. In fact, what I should have done is added some to this tree, quite frankly. It has nests that hang down like great big twiggy droplets from the trees. Absolutely magnificent. I really do miss my home of Africa, or Zimbabwe. These trees are more frequently found to the west of Zimbabwe, especially in areas like Kariba, Victoria Falls, sort of all those sort of touristy areas. Very popular with the tourists. So I have now got a little white Arkansas stone in the drill, and I am adding some teeny tiny little half-tone twigs, which will basically appear in between or in the spaces. If I want to, I can bring it in front of a branch, because the white Arkansas is very good at digging in to the glass. But it is mainly I am doing new little half-tone branches and can half-tone an already engraved branch as well. So just adding more and more depth. What I'm wanting to do now is flatten the top of this, making a nice sharp edge, and I'm just using the side of an old pink stone. It's not going to damage the stone that much, to be honest. I mean, you don't want to, if you're going to use the stone, don't do this in an area near the top that's going to create a wobble or anything like that. I usually, if I am going to use something like another burr, then I use the area at the bottom of it. And now I've flattened the top, and you can see I'm creating quite sharp blades of grass, and this stone is so wonderful at carving through diamond work. So you can see there's a half-tone. There's a half-tone on its own, and then there's a half-tone which is darker than the diamond automatically. So it looks like it's creating light and dark instantly in one stroke. There would be an enormous amount of dry, long bush grass everywhere. Now here's another stone, same sort of thing. This is very, very old, but I'm flattening the top of a very old rubber, and I'm pushing my luck here. So I don't suggest you do this. Rather let your rubber be a little bit longer, because if that touches the glass, it's not a very good idea. Obviously I'm not running this drill very fast, but it's just that rubber is about to disappear into the mandrel. Anyway, here I have another rubber. Again, this is just going to pick up upper surfaces, whereas the other little rubber was going inside some of the white Arkansas blades of grass. This is now just randomly picking upper surfaces. And now I have got a diamond burr that is coated quite far down, as you can see, and it's quite sharp and new. Using it dry, I'm able to now add some lighter blades of grass over the darkened area. It's a darkened area, but it has already got lovely dark blades of grass behind it as well, so it's quite effective. Here I have got an ancient old brownstone. You can use a green stone. It's pretty much the same sort of effect. Sometimes it has a little bit of sparkle in it. And I am just running that along the ground because in between the bush grass there is sandy, stony ground. Dry and quite pale in colour, really. It'll have little armies of ants marching along. And dung beetles. I love a dung beetle. I'll have to do one of those. Big rubber disc again, picking up some shading again. The dung beetle is an amazing little creature, or quite big creature. I used to march into my office and I used to sit and talk to them and play with them. Great big beetle, and it gathers large pieces of dung and rolls it. You see them with they go backwards with their feet up, rolling this enormous ball of dung. When I say enormous, probably about, I don't know, 10 centimeters or something. Right, here's a really big old rubber. Same sort of rubber as what we were using earlier on, but this is obviously a newer one, and I am randomly going over the top. It is making some of these branches darker, but at the same time it is leaving a hue on the clear glass, and this is giving the impression of many more branches and twigs than what I've actually engraved. It is quite an abrasive rubber, and it sounds contradictory, but it's true. It does have some pieces in it. And if you put it straight onto, as I say, you put it straight onto clear glass, you can almost give the effect of a watery effect in the distance. It's a clever rubber. I'm just adding some more grass here. I don't want the bottom to look too uniform. If you look under the TH of the 50th, you will notice that I have, with my sandblasting, I designed a little African style shape going under the TH for fun. And little things like that are important. It just suddenly came to my brain because I wanted to fill in that space with something, because often the TH it floats and it looks a little bit odd. So instead of just putting a straight line underneath it, I did a little African design. Now here I'm using a white Arkansas and I am creating stones. And I'm going fairly deep. I am pressing relatively hard and creating little pebbles and little sort of darker effects, which I will now make even darker with a little rubber. We've got the old brownstone again, and just running that over the areas So where I have just made indentations, they will now look, it's hard to see on my screen, but they should look a little bit more isolated. So of course you need to sign your work. You can see interestingly how that the branches of the tree hug around the sides of that ever diminishing top of the decanter. I decided to add a few more highlighted branches, twigs rather, really, just to break that rather rounded top. I wanted to make it a little bit more random. I have a very bad habit of making everything uniform and matching and synchronized, and sometimes I need to slap myself and just try and make it a little bit more natural. So you can apply all these effects. I know we have done a tree before, but all these effects can be applied to any kind of tree, obviously. Just make a note of the different textures of the bark. Some of them run sideways, some of them are long, some of them are sort of shorter sections of bark pattern. Yeah, I've got the white Arkansas, just adding a little bit of half-tone branches. Now you can see I haven't even mentioned all the dust. Of course, I actually have my dust extractor going, which is sucking everything up into it. Of course, I do have my mask on as well. In most cases, your mask is adequate, but obviously I am lucky enough to have a massive dust extractor, and I do create an awful lot of dust, especially when you're working with great big diamonds like that. You definitely need to be careful. And of course, as you know, the use of water does help with the dust. Touching up, still some more white Arkansas. White Arkansas. All right. You must look up the baobab on Wikipedia, or just on the internet and in general. It's fascinating. We used to take the fruit to school. You take a bag of the cream of tartar. It's almost like little squares of soury, like a sour powdery substance. Quite tasty. Right, there you are. All done. The baobab tree. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Take care and bye for now.